Leaders don't have to come from the same background or follow the same path, and there's no one better than our guest today to resonate this. Representing the third generation of Indian pharmaceutical major Cipla's founding family, Samina Hamied comes from a non-pharma background and has gone on to become the executive vice chairperson of the company. She's also the executive vice president of Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. Welcome to the show, Samina.
Thank you.
So I would like to begin by congratulating you on Cipla completing 87 years of existence. How does it feel to carry on the age-old legacy of the company?
So I'm truly humbled that I have been given this legacy to take forward, and it was started by my grandfather in 1935. And it's truly humbling what Cipla is doing today in the entire realm of caring for life, and truly privileged that I have the ability and have been trusted with this legacy to go forward. So I started off doing several smaller things at Cipla. I was looking at talent, I was looking at HR, I was looking at M&A and strategy, and those are the building blocks of any business, because I believe talent is the biggest strategic enabler to any business. I also believe that understanding what your long-term strategy is important, where you want to go, and only when you know where your point of arrival is can you even plan from your point of departure. So I think those were very critical roles right up front that I spent a lot of time on, and that helped me learn the business as well. So it was a dual role of saying I'm going to run this portfolio, but at the same time I'm going to continue to learn about the industry and our business.
Right. And did you start leading a team right after you joined, or it took a while?
It took a while. It took a while because I didn't want to be comfortable leading a team of people till I was, and it goes back to imposter syndrome, right? That you constantly believe that you don't know enough, but at some time you just got to take the plunge and jump off the cliff. And then that's what you do.
Lovely. And you come from a family of pharma veterans, and yet you pivoted. Why did you choose a career in banking and finance? Are there any similarities between your career in banking and pharma, and how did it prepare you to lead Cipla?
So I went to do my master's at the London School of Economics, and the next step was trying to get a job. I really wanted to work outside the family business, and that was just the next step. So from finance, I went into banking, and I spent 4 years at Goldman before I decided to come back to Cipla. So I think, working outside the family business, there's no safety net. You walk into work and every single day you need to prove yourself. So I think I like the anonymity. I like the fact that it was non-familiar, that no one judged you for what your last name was or who you were. They judged you for what you delivered every single day. And that teaches you a work ethos like none other. And it was tough. Banking was very, very challenging. Very different culture between working across London and then New York. So you learn to work across a spectrum of cultures, of people, of economies. And you just have to work really hard because every day you have to walk in proving yourself. So that learning sticks with you always. So you operate on those first principles now in any environment. Whether it's something in the personal domain or the professional domain, I always apply those first principles that I picked up right at the head of my career.
Right. And how did you find your feet in the pharma sector? How was the learning process like?
So it was difficult. I never understood pharma, but there was always a starting point. And I think you'll never always understand, and the flywheel for learning will continue. And I still learn every single day because it's dynamic. The industry is changing, the company is changing, the environment's changing, so the learning will never end.
Okay, so you joined Cipla when the company was going through a huge transformation. How difficult was it for you and to just take over the mantle, and did you have supportive leaders back then?
So I definitely had support. The organization had been around for more than 75 years. And we realized that for Cipla to grow and be successful over the next 75 years, we needed to embark on a massive transformation. It was at that point that we hired McKinsey, and both the senior promoters and the leadership team were on board, and that's where the journey truly started for Cipla. And it coincided with me joining the company as well, so it was exciting.
Right. And did you have like any supportive leaders who used to mentor you or guide you, or maybe just...
So definitely. So I had leaders within the company who were veterans in pharma, who had been with Cipla for over 15, 20 years and understood the industry well. There were external people who possibly were not from pharma, but had run promoter-run businesses for many decades. So a lot of guidance from them. And then there were professionals. And I truly believe that while Cipla had been promoter-run and managed, there was value in considering whether we could be promoter-led but professionally managed. And that's the journey that we undertook while we were transforming.
You aim to build Cipla into an inclusive, diverse and equitable workplace, and women empowerment has always been a subject that you've been vocal about. Can you share some struggles you had to overcome while taking on the reins of Cipla, and are they similar to what you believe other women also have to traverse?
So, when I joined Cipla, I didn't believe that there was a gender bias, but it was different because I was from the promoter family. So probably didn't have to traverse the same journey that most women have to traverse when they join an organization. But I think that we've evolved over the last 10 years. And I think the message comes from the top. It's about being inclusive. It's about being gender neutral. It's about hiring who's best for the job, not necessarily which gender they belong to. And we truly walked that talk, because in our management council at one point, we were 3 women. On our board at one point, we were 4 women. And this came not because of design. It came because we followed our strategy of saying who's right for the role, irrespective of which gender they belong to. So I think it's tough for women. Unfortunately, your career and your biological clock happen to coincide at the same time. Women struggle when they decide to get married and have kids, and I think that's when organizations really need to support and step up and say, what can we do to support women over that 5, 7, 10-year journey that makes it very challenging for them. And if you look at statistics, most women fall off at that point. So even if they fall off, is there any way we can get them back on a couple of years later? And that's truly been our journey at Cipla.
All right, and you come from a family, which has a long legacy. So, what are some learnings that you carry forward, or something that you learned from them during dinner table conversations, which you apply in your professional life?
My grandfather always said, "What is the use of making life-saving drugs if they aren't affordable and accessible?" And those true words reverberated through my childhood. That always have a purpose. Always make sure whatever you do serves some part of your community, and always make sure that you always look at the entire spectrum. And it should always be value driven, and always do the right thing even when no one is watching. And I think for me, I just always carry those 3, 4 very, very strong value driven metrics in everything that I do.
What has been the most significant barrier in your career, and what are the biggest hurdles that keep more women from getting into leadership positions?
So I think, when I spend a lot of time with women at Cipla to just understand where they feel that they are inhibited, where they feel there's a barrier to proceed. And unfortunately, and even for myself, most of the time the barriers we create for ourselves. And a lot of it goes around imposter syndrome, saying, I don't think I'm good enough. And because I don't feel I'm good enough, I don't raise my voice loud enough, and that's why I don't get heard. And when I don't get heard, I don't get seen. And my constant push to women is that you've made it this far. Now be heard. Even if what you say is incorrect, it's okay. At least your voice is heard. And have a seat at the table, have a voice. And you're here for a reason, and you've served a purpose so far. And I think it's about us as women leaders providing the fabric and the ecosystem for other women to feel that they have a safety net, and that they are not there alone, and that it's not a male-dominated world where they constantly have to prove themselves. You have to just believe that you're good, and you have to sit on the table, and you have to just carry that positive energy with you. So a lot of that is, and I think a lot of it is about mentoring. I had a lot of women mentors over the last 10 years who gave me a lot of encouragement. I suffered from imposter syndrome. I self-edited along the way, but it's people along the way who kind of lift you and make you believe and tell you it's okay to fall. I think that's the most important thing, that it's okay to fail because you'll always get up and run again.
So who do you look up to for leadership, and what is your leadership style?
So, I've been at Cipla now for over 10 years, and Dr. Hamied and Mr. Hamied have been my biggest mentors. It is their journey that I have watched over the last 10 years, but I have also watched the journey of several professionals, and I have learned across the spectrum. And I think my leadership style is definitely one of empowerment. It's about empower the professional. I think it's about having trust, and I think the trust is the foundation of every relationship. If you don't trust that people are going to do what's right, then you're always going to be double thinking.
Over the years, has your leadership style kind of changed? Like
I don't know if it's changed.
Over the years.
I think it's evolved, and you grow lots of gray hair, and you learn along the way, and your style definitely evolves. I think you also learn to adapt. So in every role you play, you have a different leadership style that works for that particular role. Right. So there isn't one, and there never will be one. It will just be a constant evolution and adaptation.
Right. And over the years, how have you grown along with Cipla? Would you like to talk about that?
So I think the company's grown, and each of us within the company, just have grown. And literally, like, you look at your kids and you look back and say, where did the last 10 years go? And I look back at my career at Cipla and I was like, where did the last 10 years go? And how I've evolved as a human being as well, and as a leader, and as a mother, because everything that happens here, in a way, translates how you are at home and how you grow as a parent as well. So it's been an incredible learning experience on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, so like you just mentioned that, you've been around for 10 years. So what was the most challenging part of your 10-year career with Cipla, and, how did you navigate them, and what lessons did you draw from it?
So I think there were many inflection points, and I think the first one was about doing a transaction in the US. And when I joined Cipla, and Cipla was 75 years at that point, they had never done an M&A transaction in their entire history. And for them it was new. To raise debt and have borrowing on your balance sheet was new. So it's just about being patient and convincing people about what's right and taking them along. And I think when you make tectonic shifts in the strategy of a business, it's really important that you take people along. You cannot crash and burn, because unless people are not aligned to what the strategy is, they will never buy in. So I think my hardest was getting people to buy in, getting the promoters to buy in. But once people bought in, then there was an incredible amount of energy to say, we're going to make this successful, and we're totally on board, and this is what Cipla's strategy should look like. So there's several inflection points, and you hit different boulders at those inflection points. But I find that the teams at Cipla, and their teams who've been here for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, but when they saw reason, you unleashed a certain amount of power that was just phenomenal. And it's just incredible how the old and the new Cipla just morphed into one very powerful organization, and was just aligned to say, this is what we want to do, and this is where we're going to take the company over the next decade.
How was it like during the pandemic? How did you navigate through, like, as a leader? What was sort of your first reaction when the pandemic hit, and given that pharma industry is at the core? So,
So it was definitely challenging, and I don't think anyone knew what to expect. And every day was a challenge. So while pharma got the status of being essential services, it was very different to what was happening on the ground. So there was a slight disconnect between the center and the state. And we had to ensure that we could get workers into our plants so we could continue to supply medication. So there were two kinds of medications. One, what we supply every day, which people take for various illnesses, whether chronic or anti-infective or respiratory, but also the new medication that was needed for COVID. So our R&D teams had to quickly pivot. We had to do record development, record manufacturing, get record regulatory approval. So both those were challenging, and also to continuously make sure that we kept our employees safe, and whether they were safe in their own homes, whether they were safe coming to work, and whether they were safe operating for us, because at the end of the day, they selflessly left their families while the world was working from home, and said, we'll come to Cipla and we'll risk our lives and those lives of our family because we need to manufacture. So it was somewhat, I saw it was like a war cry, and it was incredible how Cipla stood up to the challenge, and across the spectrum, whether it was our supply chain teams, distribution, our procurement teams, they worked 24/7. We also created a task force at Cipla to ensure that we could make sure we were available for our employees and their families as they fell sick. And it was amazing to hear because we extended the task force to families of our competitors as well. So we did not differentiate every time we got a call when someone needed a drug, whether they were a Cipla patient or they were our competitor's patient. It made no difference. And what was the most fulfilling, that we truly stood up to our ethos of caring for life, because that was in the real sense what we did every single day through the pandemic.
Okay, what is that one advice that you'd like to give to the upcoming women leaders?
So I'm not going to say it's not challenging, and I'm not going to say it's perfect, because it's not. And through my own journey as I raised my kids that grew up literally over the last 10 years, there's a challenge every single day. And my biggest message to them is that, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, and have everybody lean in, and it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to ask for help whether it's inside the organization or it's outside the organization. And don't ever feel that by asking for help, you demonstrate that you're weaker or you feel marginalized. And I think that's important. Organizations have to work towards giving women the safety net and making sure that, you know, they have the ability to help and assist as women move through every inflection point. Because as you become a mother, as you know, as your kids get older, they start going to school, you need different kind of help and a different kind of support system. And I know at Cipla, we've gone over and beyond to say, as mothers, what did we need? And is the organization doing enough of that? So whether it's flexi hours, whether it's adoption leave, you know, we are constantly hearing back. And I think you have to have your ear to the ground, you have to listen, and you have to make change. And every day is a new day. And I think, you know, believe in yourself. There is an incredible amount of power that each one of us has. Just unleash that power and trust in yourself, and, you know, have a group of people around you who lift you up when you need to be lifted, and who make you believe that you have the power to succeed.
Samina, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us some insightful leadership mantras.
Thank you.
To all our viewers, stay tuned for the next episode of Leadership Mantras, and don't forget to subscribe to our Forbes India's YouTube channel for all our shows. Thank you.